Welcome back to my Commodore 64 Games Memories video series. This is where I look at old games and some of the technical details behind them. Today we have Ghouls and Ghosts, published in 1989 by US Gold, copyright Capcom and IREM Corporation. The coder was Stephen Ruddy, the developer was of course Software Creations, graphics by Andrew R. Threlfall, and the musician was Tim Folin. I thought I would compare this release with the previous Ghosts and Goblins, which was the previous game in the series. This game has some unusual level data layout, and also, so yes, if you like these kind of technical deep dive videos, then please do consider liking or subscribing to this channel, or sending me a super thanks. They are all always very much appreciated. I'm looking at the disc version. It has this rather nice little loading screen, and if I put a breakpoint in the lower part of the drive memory, we can see that it's actually executing some drive code there at 600 in hex onwards. But I'm not going to spend too long looking at that drive code, otherwise this video would be much longer. It's doing quite a bit of loading. The Commodore 64's debug memory there in the bottom 3 or 4 pages of zero page and extended zero page are actually quite empty, look, which includes 256 bytes for the stack at 100 in hex, of course, up until 1FF in hex. We have this rather nice but functional title screen. The music in this game, I really did like this music. When it came out, I felt it was really atmospheric. The little wobbly, wavy side-to-side thing is just a pixel scroll, horizontal pixel scroll register being updated every scan line. It's nothing too special, but it does look quite nice, doesn't it? So I'm terrible at this game. I'm not going to be able to play through this game very much. But looking at the memory debug display, we can see actually there's quite a lot of writing going on there. And I think that's writing there for the two double buffered screen areas of memory. It seems that they're constantly, look, even when the screen is not scrolling, the screen is constantly being written to. It's using a double buffered screen there. We can see that in the graphics map. At C000 and C400 in hex. We can see that it's loading from BC00, BD00, and storing into C6. Of course, C6 is going to be storing into one of the two screen buffers because that's where we've got the watch on store. We've got the watch on store set up at C000, so that's at the top left-hand corner of the first screen, first double buffered screen. But we're loading from BC00, BD00, loading from BC00 again, loading from BD00. Because these are separated by a page, 256 bytes or 100 bytes in hex, looks like it might be block data. It's certainly reading something and then storing to the screen. It would tend to indicate that there's block data going on. The arrangement of the load from BC00 and BD00, which looks like the block data, and storing it into the screen, looks like a slightly strange arrangement at this particular point in time. It's using the Y register to store into the indirected memory zero page memory pointer at C6 there, which stores into the screen. But this Y register is being steadily updated, steadily incremented. Whereas the load from what we're assuming is the block data is loading with the X register there, that I can see the X index register. Now the X register seems to come from 1700, 1701, Y. Intriguing. So maybe the memory area at 1700 contains map data, and I'm putting that in imaginary air quotes if you like, because I'm not entirely sure yet. But yes, I mean, the area at 1700 looks like it might be map data, or rather indexes into what looks like block data. That's rather interesting structure, isn't it, at B000? Just having a look at these screen banks. Now that's obviously the two double buffered screens. Let's have a look. Where are the characters? Well, there's there's the character set for the score panel at F800. Okay, and there's the character set for okay, so there seems to be two game-related character sets in memory in the last Vic bank there. One at E800, and look, the characters for the ground are the same as F000, but the crucifix, the cross shape thing, and the gravestones are only present in F000. Okay. Well, the graphical variation in this game, in the game's level, is quite high, so having two character sets there would make sense. So anyway, it's doing a load from BC00, X, storing it into indirected C6, Y. Y is being steadily incremented. And then down there at 5037, look, it's doing a compare Y with $28. $28 is 40 in decimal. Well, you can see that it's loading from 1701 again, and then indexing into what looks like the block data. Let's keep on stepping through this. It's storing somewhere into screen. Yes, see, it's now storing at C0, F0. That's in low byte, high byte format. Let's fill the first couple of pages of screen RAM. Okay, we'll fill it with FF. No, fill it with, I don't know, 1? There we go. At least we've got some solid characters that we can see. So now when I'm stepping through this code, we can see, look. Well, this is an unusual block draw. It seems to be rendering a horizontal strip. Okay. Well, look at that. It's rendering a single character high horizontal strip, and it keeps on going through. Look, it's doing a compare Y with $28, hash $28, immediate $28, which, as I said just now, is 40 in decimal, 40. So, so the start of the loop seems to have been optimized for rendering a partial block, and then this end part of the loop seems to be optimized for rendering perhaps full rows of now it's doing a load from 1701 and then 2 stores to the screen, and also 2 loads from what looks like block data storage. So I'm guessing at this point that the block scheme for this map is either 2x1 or 2x2 blocks. That's probably the most likely. At the moment, you can see though, look, it's rendering a horizontal scan line. Oh, okay, this has, yeah, okay, so it's stepped into interrupt code. I can see that because I can see from the status register, so I'm stepping out and it's going back into the mainline code now. When I say mainline code, I mean code which is not running as part of the interrupt or an interrupt. So anyway, we're back into the horizontal screen draw now. And just stepping through this code to see what happens, I can begin to see at 504B another load X with 1700, Y. So that might be the next row for the same blocks in the map. I don't think this data is being written to BC00, BD00 and BE00 maybe, and BF00. Just looking at this in the character set, well, with the game character set, the data there at BC00 does seem to be a little bit jumbled, doesn't it? Okay, we need to study this a little bit more to understand it. think I'm beginning to piece together how it's working. So we have some breakpoints in the first part of the block draw. Ah, look, there's a load with BE and BF00. So let's put another breakpoint there. There's the breakpoint at the beginning of what looks like the block draw for the screen. And there's a load, yes, there's another BE00 there. Right, let's see what we get now. It would be useful if we filled the screen. Yep, it's still rendering to C2F8. That's low byte, high byte format, so it's still rendering into the first screen. So we'll just fill the screen, okay. All right, so that load with BE00 is, and BF00 is definitely, now it's rendering into the other screen. Need to get round to this loop again, so it's rendering into the first screen. So I think it's there we go. So we've got a whole screen full of characters, and I think my player characters just died, probably because the game logic has detected that the player got stuck in the background, or it was collidable background blocks or something like that, and then the character dies. Let's get to somewhere safer, where there aren't so many enemies. Actually, these enemies are a little bit annoying, aren't they? Because they keep on popping up in the middle of nowhere. We can see, actually, when the screen scrolls, that the area above the two double buffered screens in the graphics debug view there is showing a lot of green reads. There aren't any writes going into the block data area. It's just a whole bunch of reads, and it's sparse reads, which tends to tell me that it's blocks. Oh, now the player character is apparently floating above the background. Maybe I've been messing around with this code a little bit too much or something. I think it might have got a little bit confused. I'm just going to change to the sprites view in the last Vic bank. Oh, in the bottom right hand corner of the graphics map debug view there for the sprites, I can see that it's doing a dynamic update for the last, the player character sprite in the bottom right hand corner, almost the bottom right hand corner. Let's just do a quick watch breakpoint store, and there we go. So that's storing data into FB80. If I fill FB80 to FB, what is it? 40 bytes in hex for the whole sprite, so that's FBBF. If I fill it with FF, there we go, it's changed to a nice solid sprite now. If I delete the breakpoint, let's just put a breakpoint there. That deletes the watch store, and this will be one of the stores into the sprite data, perhaps. But it should be, because that's the sprite that I filled. That's interesting, it's filling the sprite data from the bottom. Look, as I advance execution for one iteration until it hits the breakpoint again, it seems to be loading from 0203 indirected and then storing it into the sprite, but backwards. And it seems to be doing some piecemeal reads, some sparse reads from this data here at the beginning of memory, well, in the first memory bank. So look, this looks like approximately sprite data, right? In the first Vic bank, but it is not real sprite data that gets rendered by the hardware. It's sprite data which is sparsely copied and then stored into the real sprite in the last Vic bank, which is the dynamic player sprite. This is a good way of avoiding having all of the player sprite frames in memory, and kind of like doing sparse copies could be considered kind of decompression, I suppose, if you wanted to. If it was doing some composition or some compositing or something like that from the source data, I suppose you could call it sparse decompression or compositing decompression, if you like. But yeah, anyway, let's go back to the map data. I really want to understand the map data. But that's interesting anyway, that this game uses dynamic sprites for the player animation. As I said, it avoids having all of the player animation frames in the Vic bank. It frees up the Vic bank then for having lots more enemy frames, like the boss and all of the enemy characters in the game. Anyway, so let's go back to this map data routine, see if we can understand to some better details with more confidence on how this map draw works. So we think that we've got some block data BC00, BD, BE, and BF00. So that tells us, I think, pretty much that the blocks are 2x2 characters. So let's fill both double buffered screens with solid characters, and let's step over these breakpoints that I've set, where it's referencing BC00 and BE00. So BC00 and BD00 are referenced for one horizontal line on look, and then BE and BF are only referenced for the next row on the screen. Okay. Advancing the breakpoint again, or rather advancing the execution over the breakpoint, we can see, yes, definitely those characters start getting drawn in the next horizontal row on the screen. Yeah, it's definitely, yeah, I think it's definitely loading the next block to draw from what looks like the map data at 1700 or 1701 in this case, because it's offset by 1 because it's already drawn one block on the left hand side of the screen. There's a distinct lack of color memory updates at the moment, aren't there? Which is interesting to note. Let's have a look at 1700 in memory, see what we can. Well, it seems to be mostly empty 0 blocks, but with some, like 3, 4, 3, 4. Okay, well, I filled that memory, but it didn't seem to do much in terms of rendering, right? Let's try that again. The first 17 bytes. Well, okay. That's weird. I've just filled that memory, and then let's have a look at it. The memory has been reinitialized. So something is storing into 1700. So what's storing into one? Oh, okay. So this code is, oh, look. It's loading from 0 to 03 indirected. Okay. And then storing linearly into 1700, comma x. So it's loading indirected 02 and 03, comma y, and then storing linearly into 1700, comma x. Why would it be doing that then? Okay, so it's loading from A0E8 in this instance, then storing into 1700. Look, 1700, the memory range up here. Yeah, okay, so let's zoom in a little bit. Let's load the snapshot image again. Yeah, look, it's doing write and reads. The yellow is write, and then the read is coming up as green. That is interesting. Why is it storing data into what looks like the source map? Let's use Charpad to load some of this data. So let's save out Ghouls and Ghosts GNG block.bin, and we'll save out BC00 to BFFF first of all. We will have to use my swizzle tool to unswizzle that data so that Charpad can actually load it, of course. Because Charpad expects the data to be in top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right ordering for its block data. We need the character set data, right? So we'll save that out as well. The game character set is at F000, at least the visible one that we're interested in currently. And we will save out 800 hex bytes of that data. Just checking what it looks like. Of course, there's 2 bytes at the beginning, which Charpad should handle when it loads the the character set data. It should automatically detect that. Oh yeah, I need to make sure that, I mean, bank RAM, not bank CPU, just to really make sure that we're saving the RAM underneath the ROMs, or the kernel ROM in this case. The block data was also underneath the end of the basic ROM, so definitely make sure that we're in bank RAM. So let's use the Alt Swizzle tool to swizzle the data. I was an idiot. I forgot that it needs to be input file, output file, and then the number of bytes to skip, and then the swizzle parameters for the orientation of the data, or rather the range of the data. So yeah, I'm definitely an idiot. Let's load that now into ChildPad. So I've already loaded the character set data, and this is the silly block data. There we go. There's the, look. You see, that looks a little bit sensible, doesn't it? So that's the command line. I'm just copying this into my debugging notes text file. And of course, I will be committing the debugging notes text file into my source control, and I'll put a link to it in the video description below, so you can also follow along with all of these notes, and you can read my thought processes. Just copying these as well and putting them in the debugging notes text file, so I don't forget where the file data comes from and what steps I went through. Of course, I could watch this video again, but I don't really want to do that just for finding out my debugging notes. Ghosts text, there we go. So yeah, that block data looks, you know, there's the ground, there's some walls, there's some tree trunks, some trees, and arrangements of skulls, so on and so forth. Let's see if we can find out where that source map data is from. The game is currently paused. There we go, let's unpause it. And okay, so indirected with 2. So let's have a look at 2 and 3 in memory. 2 and 3 in memory is pointing at A0E8. Okay. So maybe the map data starts at A000, but we'll have a look at this. Let's have a look at this source table here. This looks like a low-high data table. Look, okay, so the map data starts at A020. Then the next row is A0E8, is it? Okay. The difference between these two numbers and the difference between the next number, let's just calculate that. See what the number is. So A0E8 minus A020 equals C8. Okay, in hex. The next pair of numbers along, A1B00 minus A0E8 is also C8. Okay, cool. A278 minus the previous number, A1B0, is also C8. Okay, so this low-high data table there is used to store into 2 and 3, which is used for the indirected load for what looks like map data, which then gets used for the live version, if you like, of the map data for whatever reason, and then is used for the block draw. So maybe this kind of tends to indicate perhaps that the map data might be C8 bytes with width. Okay, maybe. So let's just let's save, sorry, using the Vice debugger here. There's one of my previous videos that goes through all of these tools, the Vice emulator and its monitor debug window that I'm using here. Also C64 debug GUI, ICU64, which is what gives us all of the graphics, debug views, the character sets, the screens, the sprites and everything else, and the memory utilization window. All of that is ICU64. One of my previous videos goes through and looks at the tools. Let's set up a provisional map width of 200 bytes and a height of 256 bytes. Okay, or either coordinate base. I think ChildPad actually stores things as 2-byte values, not just byte values internally. Let's load the map. what we think is the map data. Let's scroll along. Well, okay, so that's kind of like the map data. There's sparse areas, there's tree blocks and stuff like that, all grouped together, and land blocks, but the layout's not right, is it? It's not 200. No, it's not. It's not 200 blocks wide. I'm pretty sure. There's something not quite right there. No, we don't want to import Vice snapshot data. Having a little think. Okay, so let's save it out from A020, which was the first low-high address for the first part of the map data. We'll trim off the first 2 bytes. It would be useful if the monitor save command in Vice would not store the 2 bytes for the original memory address. Right. Anyway, so let's re-import this map. Still not quite right, is it? Okay, so if the blocks are 2 by 2, we've got the crucifix cross shape there, right? And yeah, so if the blocks are 2 by 2, then each screen is going to be 20 units wide, right? So let's re-import that data again. Import the map data, and we'll load the map. Ah, look. Okay, so the map, the game level map. Okay, that's tree. Yeah, okay, so the game, that explains why it's storing or calculating data into what I thought was the map data at 1700. It's not. It's, yeah, the real map data is organized as screens of 20 blocks wide and however many blocks deep it is. And that screen data is copied, depending on the map scroll position, into the temporary map, if you like, at 1700. Yeah, and then that's used for the screen draw. Okay, so that's certainly one way of storing the map data, is to have a whole bunch of map data as screens stored in memory. I mean, okay, it means you have to do your extra little bit of copying around to make sure that your copying is done. But yeah, okay, cool, fine. So now, yeah, now I've got that map data loaded. Let's see if we can import the other character set, which is the second character set used. Yeah, look. If I scroll up now, the trees are okay. Okay, so yeah. And now the start of the level screens are not correct because they utilize the data from the previous character set. Okay, all right, so that's fine. So I think we can leave this video there. I'm just going to update the debugging notes text file. But yeah, the map data in Ghouls and Ghosts has an unusual format. It's storing screens. And of course, yes, so yeah, 20 in decimal times, say for example, if a screen is 10 blocks high, 20 times 10 is 200 in decimal, and 200 in decimal is equal to C8 in hex. Yeah. So C8 in hex, I'm pretty sure, right? Is that right? Mental arithmetic, copy kind of working, perhaps, hopefully. Yeah, I think that's C800 in hex. So yeah, that would explain why the low and high byte data table had a width of C8. Those low and high addresses were separated by $C8 in hex, 200 in decimal entries. Yeah, okay, cool. So anyway, yes, the game has an unusual map data layout format where screens are stored in memory, and then the screen data is temporarily stored as blocks, but temporarily decompressed, if you like, or just copied into a temporary map. and temporary map is then used for rendering. And we have the lovely dynamic player sprite being updated at the end of the VicBank. So I think we'll leave this video there. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you like this kind of deep dive into old Commodore 64 retro games. If you do, then please do consider liking or subscribing to my channel, and a super thanks is always very much appreciated. Take care, have a great day, evening or night, wherever you are.